This set of PowerPoint slides is going to discuss the themes in Sister Carrie. So, Sister Carrie has many themes to it that brings out a certain richness to this novel, and it makes the story much more complex. So, I want to talk about some of the themes in Sister Carrie, and I want you to be able to look for certain passages to support these themes as you're analyzing this book for your reading and also for writing your essay. So the first theme is women and femininity. The early 1900s brought on new expectations of femininity. These expectations are reflected through the characters of Mrs. Hurstwood, Mrs. Hale, and Mrs. Vance. These women are aggressively striving for all the benefits of the American dream with upward mobility and capitalism. They are adorned on the outside with feminine clothing. These items bring attention to their femininity, yet they are reflections of their participation in mass consumerism, which gives them a masculine quality that isn't seen by society. So the clothing that they wear kind of mask the aggressiveness of getting bits and pieces of the American dream because they dress well and they're pretty. And so people can't see how they are hiding their aggressiveness. And that aggressive quality is not feminine. But the 1900s brought this new expectation that women could actually be much more aggressive than they had been in the past. Minnie and Carrie are contrasts of the different sides of the values of young women. Like many women who are expected to behave, Minnie acquiesces to her husband's demands and takes her place as second in the household. She is meek and female-like. However, Carrie cannot do this. She is motivated by wealth. Her values push her to move up in society. She will not settle for less, and this quality is very much masculine-like. Carrie is a pivotal example of feminism. So Minnie will often ask her husband if she can go out or do something, and her husband tells her what to do, and she listens to him. However, Carrie can't do this, and she tells Minnie, let's go to the pictures, let's go to the show. And she says, well, I have to ask my husband. And Carrie can't see that Minnie has made this decision, and she has a responsibility to her household and her child, where Carrie is single and she can do what she likes, yet she's living with her sister and her brother-in-law, and it kind of limits what she can do. But when she's in Chicago and she first sees the city, she wants to be part of it, the adventure, the money, and all of the lifestyle that comes with it. So she's very different than her sister Minnie is, and that they're only a few years apart. Yet Minnie has already established herself as Sven's wife, and she will do whatever he says. And she is the typical expectation of a meek, female-like person. The society and class is also another theme in this novel. There's different class systems that are explored in this novel. We start off with Carrie going to live with her sister, and her sister is of the lower class. Sven is an immigrant, and they are struggling to make ends meet in their household. That's why they actually get Carrie to come and live with them so she can help pay their expenses. And so they are the lower classes. But through Carrie's experiences, we move up in society with her. So she rejects that lower level class that her sister lives in. And so Drouet gives her an opportunity to live a middle class lifestyle. So with Drouet, she's able to have a nice apartment and nice clothes and move up. But there's still more of an upper class society here, and that's Hirschwood. He's extremely rich. He's got a 10-room home. He's very well established, and he's the higher class than Drouet. So with Carrie, we see her moving up the class, and then later on in the novel, towards the end, when she starts making her own money and she starts making herself her way into the world, she's really at the upper end of the class system. So from the beginning of the novel, we see it as the lowest class, and then we move up to the highest class with her. So we are moving up with Carrie, but we're also exploring the different classes that Theodore Dreiser talks about in this novel. Another theme is isolation and loneliness. The theme of isolation and loneliness lingers in this novel. It's symbolized with the movement of the rocking chair, where the characters of Carrie, Drouet, and Hirschwood rock back and forth. They are in their own thoughts, and they don't really have deep conversations with each other. So Carrie loves to rock back and forth. From the time that she's moved in with Drouet, she has a rocking chair. And at the end of the novel, when she lives by herself, she's rocking again alone, and she's very unhappy. Drouet rocks on the chair as well when he is thinking about how Carrie has cheated on him, and he's trying to think of what to do. He sits and he rocks on that chair. He goes back and forth, not really coming up with any plan, but he just rocks back and forth. And later on in New York, when Hirschwood and Carrie live together in that apartment, Hirschwood is always coming home to rock in his rocking chair and read the paper, to go back and forth. So they're very well isolated in that existence, and the rocking chair kind of symbolizes that isolation, and they don't have deep conversations with each other as well. Carrie is always alone in the apartment, both with her relationship with Drouet and Hirschwood. So they pretty much leave her alone, and they go off and do their own thing, and she's left alone by herself. Their thoughts are revealed to the reader, but when they speak to each other, they're not transparent with their feelings with each other. This lack of revealing their true thoughts reflects their loneliness. So they can't really feel comfortable enough to express who they really are with their partners. And so it leaves them in this very lonely, isolated place mentally, as well as physically for Carrie. Morality and ethics is another theme in this novel. There's a questioning of values on the part of many of the characters with morality and ethics, and they're very flawed in many ways. So Carrie lives with two men that she's not married to, and somehow she does know that you don't do this, yet she's doing it, and she expects the men to marry her, but they haven't. Carrie has an affair with Hirschwood. He's a married man. She doesn't know he's married, but at the same time, she's living in Drouet's house, or a place that Drouet has offered her, and supposedly in a relationship with Drouet, and she's already having an affair with Hirschwood because she likes him better because he's richer. Hirschwood leaves his wife for a younger woman, which is Carrie, that he's having an affair with. So he starts to have this affair with Carrie, and then he leaves his wife for her. Hirschwood also betrays Drouet and goes after his woman, so he starts hanging around with Carrie and Drouet, and takes Drouet's woman away from him, Carrie. Drouet lives with a woman and dates other women. So one of the observations that Hirschwood has made is that he has seen Drouet in town with other women, and he's confronted him with it and asks about it, and Drouet brushes it off. Hirschwood steals from his employer when he plans to run away with Carrie. He plans to run away with her and marry her, supposedly, and he steals the $10,000. Carrie abandons her sister and Hurstwood with a note and no explanation of what she's done. And that's all of these things question their morality and their ethics in this novel. So another theme is ambition and wealth. These two themes go hand in hand to represent the American dream. The ambition to succeed is to get wealthy. Carrie thinks about all the nice things she wants to have, and the desire for those things motivate her to make a lot of money. The talk of money and making money in regards to the value in society are repeated with the characters' clothing, lifestyle, and language. The Hurstwood children are examples of this ambition. They are young and ambitious to have great wealth, with George Jr.'s career choice and Jessica's desire to marry a wealthy man. Jessica wants to please her mother, who is also very ambitious. She also wants to satisfy her tastes for ownership of nice things. So a lot of conversations are about money and choices of what to do in relation to money. So what goes up can come down. The American dream would not move without ambitious and wealthy people who move the country towards being one of the richest superpowers. It's also interesting to note that on one hand, the idea of ambition and wealth are observed. However, the other side is observed as well, with Hurstwood spiraling downward in society to become a homeless man. This idea is contrasted with the masses in the novel who are pushing to move up, while at the same time there are people falling down. So even though the 1900s was a time of great transition for American society, because it was a time when department stores were being built, banks were expanding, people were moving to larger cities and making a lot of money, there was also a lot of people losing money. And there was also people falling. So Hurstwood is an example of that. He is at the height of the financial power, and because of the poor decisions he makes, he ends up a homeless man and literally dies in the street as a result of that. So what goes up can come down. Marriage is another theme in this novel. Theodore Dreiser's ideas about marriage are reflected through characters and their thoughts. Unhappily Married. Mrs. Hurstwood doesn't appreciate being married. She nags George and pushes him to create more wealth. He is an unhappily married man who has very little communication with his wife. So maybe his reasoning for wanting to leave her for Carrie was that maybe he was trying to look for a little bit of happiness, because going home made him really miserable, because when he came home, all Julia would do is nag about what to buy for their daughter, how to help the daughter make make her in a more positionable place to find a wealthy man. So the conversations were really enriching in any way or fulfilling for George. And his wife doesn't really appreciate being married because she just has to constantly push him. So Julia Hurstwood is an interesting character because she's the epitome of the American dream. She's constantly pushing for a better and wealthier lifestyle, and she needs George because he's the one that's making all of that money. So they're constantly spending the money, but going home to this every night has really put George in a really happy state, to the point where he wants to start fresh and new. And possibly why he sweeps Carrie off her feet like that and takes her to Montreal first and then to New York could be because he's looking for a happiness. Then there's all the wealthy women in the novel who are represented by Mrs. Hale and Mrs. Vance. And they're settled well in society due to their marriages. Their incomes are defined by their husband's incomes. So they're settled and they're prosperous and they're doing well, and they will always be well and off because they are the wealthy of the society. And so their marriages put them in that position. So marriage as a way to go up. Jessica marries to move up in society. Her marriage is dependent on social position in life as well as his wealth. So Jessica has to moves up. She goes into a higher class and a higher, wealthier class, and she becomes more of an established woman because of her marriage. Minnie's lot in life. Minnie is married to a man who is controlling in the household. He sets the tone and the mood for the family. Minnie is obligated to her child and her husband. She doesn't have a say in the household or her marriage. So Sven is a very low earning wage or earning worker. He doesn't make a lot of money. He's an immigrant. And really, Minnie probably came from the same place that Carrie came from. So when she came out to Chicago, the Sven was the best she could have found, because she doesn't have money to attract a wealthy husband. And so the only possibility that she and Sven would have to move up in life is if Sven did better. So her financial success depends on Sven's. And at the moment, her lot in life is very poor because she's part of the lower class because of her ties and her marriage and the decisions she made while marrying Sven. So he sets the rules. He has to get up early in the morning to go to work. He comes home in the evenings. He wants to eat his dinner, read his paper, and go to bed, because his whole life is about working a very hard manual labor job. Carrie is never married in this novel. She lives with Drouet and Herstwood, hoping that they will marry her. In fact, she's the one who asked them to marry her. Drouet makes her promises, but he never comes through with them. So he's always telling her, well, when I get the next deal, I'll be able to have enough money to marry you. When I get the next big bit of money, I'll be able to marry you. But he never comes through. Herstwood says that he will marry her. He actually did not expect to marry her when he ran away with her, but she's the one that brought it up. He also makes her think that they are married when they go to Montreal. He lies to her and says, I made a marriage agreement with you. And later he tells her that he never married her when they were living in New York and they had problems with their relationship. She's under the assumption that she's his wife, and he blurts out, I never married you. So marriage is a really interesting phenomenon in this story. It's a status quo. Marriages, ironically, are not looked upon as having a relationship, but having a status in society. So you don't really marry for the connection that you have with the other person, but because of the position that you're going to acquire and where that's going to lead you. So the best that Minnie could do was get Sven. Carrie was able to get Drouet, but not to marry her. So she really doesn't go up in status because she's not really his wife. Then she doesn't go up in status with Herstwood. Yet that works out for her because Herstwood starts to drop. So it's only until she takes control of her own life and gets her own job and makes her own money that she's able to raise in status quo. And in that way, Carrie is very much a feminist character in this novel. So the themes in Sister Carrie are really interesting, and I'd like you to look for them in your readings and bring these up in your analysis for your essays. So when you're writing an analysis for an essay and you're talking about the themes, I don't want you to give me a plot summary of the story, but I want you to relate these ideas and these themes to the passages in the book. And that is it for the the PowerPoint slides on themes in Sister Carrie.